fearsome.
Oh man, you know what? That gives me the perfect place to segue because you're talking about everything that this team has done to assemble not just a good foundation, but they've built the first floor, the second floor, and they finished this house, this building as it relates to Detroit Lions. And another team that we thought was going to be able to kind of do this thing, and they discussed, starting at the foundation, was the Detroit Pistons when they did hire Troy Weaver. And we'll get into our Woodward Pistons segment right now. So I will definitely reset things. You guys got to help me get this drum roll going for the legend, Detroit News Rod Beard. Let's rock out. Hey, yo, shout out and welcome again to the legend, Detroit News Rod Beard. Brother, you got to kick things off with Rod's thoughts.
Is Dallas really this bad?
Oh,
or are the
man.
Celtics this good? You look at the trades that Boston made and how they remade their roster, and you saw that they were right there. And it shows again, you've got to be aggressive and go after the pieces that you need. And I'll admit, in the beginning, I'm like, Porzingis, why are they doing this? They don't need him. He's going to upset the apple cart in the chemistry that they have. But he's been the catalyst for these first two games of the finals so far. So it's just another lesson in pointing to, even though you think you're there and you've got enough, continue to try to build that roster and get those the pieces that you think are the weakest. Continue to try to build those. There's no such thing as you're right there, you have enough. Go back and continue to build that roster.
Yeah, this finals has definitely been surprising, and it's completely gone against the narrative that I thought it would. Seeing Luka Doncic hobbled obviously is going to play a big role in terms of how this finals is going to go. But I didn't think that Kyrie Irving would be slowed down as much as he has been. You know what? Shout out to JB Smooth. We call him Woodward Sports MVP. He got his hands raised up right now as well. Definitely, man. I got to definitely shout him out because he said Jrue Holiday, and he got the hands raised up again. Shout out to JB Smooth. He definitely said that Jrue Holiday would play a big factor in this series. And when you got Luka kind of hobbled, and now you got Kyrie Irving taken really out of the finals because of Jrue Holiday and the rest of that defense, it's had a huge effect. It's exposed their lack of depth.
Oh, absolutely. And to kind of piggyback off of that, Rod, I trust you that you are a ball knower. We all agree Rod is a ball knower.
Definitely.
So I have to ask you this question. Jayson Tatum in these first couple games is shooting the ball horribly. He's 12 of 38. That's a 32%. From you watching the series, is he playing better than his stats indicate, or is he just being carried by a good team?
He's playing better because he's another player who can dish the ball. His assists are just as important as his points. And Luka is the same sort of way that if he can get 10 or 12 assists with 20 points, that's as effective as him scoring 40. But in Tatum's case, you got Jaylen Brown playing out of his mind, and their depth there with Porzingis and their bench. I mean, their guards defensively are just dogging the Dallas backcourt where they can't get anything else going, and their front court isn't good enough to carry that team. That's where I thought Boston had the advantage, was that you can throw Tatum, you can throw Brown, you can throw any of those guys, and Jrue Holiday. You've got four guys that you can throw at a faster guard, or you can throw at Luka if you need to. And so, again, we talked about this in previous weeks. Where is the NBA right now? It's about wings and guards. It's not necessarily about bigs. If you got a good big, good for you, but you've got to have wings and guards to be able to advance and to play well in this league.
Yep. And you know what? Obviously, the Pistons, they got a long way to go before they get into these finals here, these NBA finals. But they believe that they're starting on the right path again with the hiring of Trajan Langdon, and obviously we'll reset some of this news here. There was the hiring of Blackstone as well as J.R. Holden into this front office. Some of the positions, we're still waiting to see exactly what they're going to be. Then there was the news as well of Tayshaun Prince being a candidate for the Detroit Pistons GM job. It's something we've talked about on this podcast as well as the Wake Up Woodward show. It would be something that I would absolutely like, but again, you got to ask yourself, who are they going to be here? We don't quite know what decisions they had a role in playing in their previous stops. We just know that there was success as well as some accolades in their previous stops. But we heard the same with Troy Weaver. So if we're going to learn a little bit from that, obviously we can be optimistic about it, but we don't really know how it's going to pan out. But Tayshaun Prince as a candidate would be awesome. Cade Cunningham as well as some of this other Pistons news. It is via James Edwards of The Athletic. reported that the Detroit Pistons will be offering or supposed to be giving Cade this max contract this offseason as well, which really leads us into something that Flannel has been very passionate about as well in our first Pistons segment, the direction of this team. Hey, listen, Cade is our guy. Let's build around that, and let's identify what that right way is. But obviously, some of the other news that's kind of blocking us from being able to understand exactly what's going to happen is the lack of a press conference so far for Trajan Langdon and those that have been hired. I just needed to be able to get your thoughts. Is this something unprecedented? Is it something weird? Is there a strategy to this for the organization or for Trajan Langdon? And just be able to get your overall thoughts on it.
Well, I mean, I think it could be something as simple as Tom Gore's schedule. He might be out of the country or not able to get – and legitimately, that's how a lot of things work with the organization. You're not going to have a press conference like that unless you have Tom Gore's there. And so you could just be waiting on his schedule or something to clear up or for him to be able to get in and do all of that. Maybe they want to hire the GM first and just introduce the whole front office at the same time. And if you're waiting on Dennis Lindsey, then you've got to wait a little bit more for all of that stuff to happen. So I think I wouldn't worry about it. There are 10 reasons why it could be happening, and I don't think very many of them are bad.
And you know what? Thank you for bringing up the Dennis Lindsey news as well. I know that he was a candidate for the position that Trajan Langdon got, but it was reported as well. I believe via Mark Stein, too, that he's a candidate to join Trajan Langdon's front office, actually, which I think would be also another move that I'll be highly optimistic about and just looking forward to seeing exactly how this thing works out. But when you're talking about this front office and their vision, one of the questions I wanted to be able to ask, and I guess that's going to be kind of the theme of this thing since we haven't been able to have the press conference yet, being able to kind of talk about the questions that we do have for Trajan Langdon. And at first I thought my biggest question was how quickly do you want to get this thing turned around or not? Are you looking to have your 4 to 5 years, or are you looking to get this thing done in maybe 2 to 3 years, which would obviously mesh well with a lot of the fans and the supporters and the observers? But my biggest question is now, how much does Trajan Langdon value, or how does he view the young collection of talent that is here with the Detroit Pistons right now? Because obviously we all have our own way that we look at it. And when Monty Williams came in, I don't think anybody believed that he would undervalue Jaden Ivey compared to what we believed, as well as overvalue a guy like Killian Hayes in ways that we definitely didn't believe in. Even to the people that ardently would support a Killian Hayes as at least a basketball player that belonged in the NBA, none of us believed that he should have been a guy that should have been starting. And so my biggest question here is, how exactly does he kind of view this collection of young talent, and have we kind of overvalued who these players have been or what they could be?
I think the value is there. It's just how does it all mesh together? Because you've got these great ingredients for this meal that you're going to make, but if it's not going to taste good when you put it all together, then it just doesn't work. So the individual pieces, I think, are fine, but how do they play well? And how do they play together? And that's going to be the big question is just how do you – my biggest question is going to be about culture. What kind of culture does he want to bring to this team? Is it building with the young guys? Do you need more vets to kind of augment this roster? I hope that's a yes. But what's that mix look like? And there's a lot. What is different about it? What do you if Troy Weaver was about the restoring, what is his outlook for what this team should be? It's not just restoring and bringing back the former glory. You can't use that. It's got to be something different. What does he want his trademark for this thing to be?
Yeah, and I think part of this restore, or maybe even getting the Pistons some sort of identity moving forward, is just getting Cade Cunningham more help.
Get that man some help.
I am bullish on Cade Cunningham as the franchise player moving forward, and I think we even saw him a little bit unlocked towards the end of last season, even when you had a guy like Fontecchio playing, because Fontecchio was playing very, very well, and I think he was a good complement to Cade. How are we undervaluing, as Pistons fans, even some people, how much a Cade Cunningham could get unlocked just by even adding one all-star caliber player to this team, like a Brandon Ingram or a Zach LaVine?
Right. I think that's what we've been saying all along is he needs an all-star. He needs a complimentary player. and maybe not a complementary player that is not as good as him. You need somebody maybe better than him who can score. And just in talking to people, like, people are wondering, is he a point guard? Legit question to ask, but let's say you went out and got Trae Young, which I've heard some people kind of toss around.
Yeah. Yep.
Does Cade play better next to Trae Young? I can't say that for sure. But is Trae Young the guy you want to go out and swing and base this rebuild on? Are you more comfortable with Trae Young or with a Brandon Ingram? I'm going to say Brandon Ingram because that's where the league is. You've got to have that guy. You don't need a Trae Young. If somewhere down the road you went and got a Trae Young, I'm fine with that. But you need guys who are going to be able to come and to change the way this team plays, change the way they defend, change the when you walk off the bus. You've got a Brandon Ingram now with a Jalen Duren and with a Jaden Ivey and with a Cade Cunningham. That looks a whole lot different than adding another piece to the roster. So I think that's the way you've got to kind of look at it is what is this team going to be when you add that guy, but also which guy are you adding? Which position makes the most impact for what you're trying to do? And I think it's got to be either a 3 or a 4. It's got to be one of those guys.
Yeah, I definitely agree as well. And just Chase Amley in the chat, I just want to be able to kind of highlight this comment. He says, acquiring Zach LaVine would be like us trading for Blake Griffin all over again. Please, no Zach LaVine, please. And the difference here in acquiring like a guy like a Zach LaVine is that the Pistons are starting at the base level, and they're able to build around the talent that they do bring here. And that's something that they weren't able to do. When they got Blake Griffin, whether it fit or not, they just brought him in, and they rammed themselves up against the cap space. They had nothing else to be able to do anything else, and they went with this kind of double big look again. And luckily, Blake Griffin was just versatile enough to actually make that work. But when you're looking at what these Detroit Pistons can do right now to acquire talent, they can add more than just a Zach LaVine and be able to get so much talent here that the usage rates of players like Zach LaVine and Cade Cunningham can go down in the hopes that their efficiency goes up. And I trust this team's ability to play make when you have the ball in the hands of a guy like Cade Cunningham. Even if he's not your best scorer, I do trust the fact that Cade Cunningham is going to be able to get the rest of the team involved. And it's something we've tracked, Rod, really from the beginning of this podcast, and having Cade Cunningham be that number one pick for the Detroit Pistons is the fact that he likes to probe. He likes to look to get his teammates going early in those games. He likes to come out of the halves doing the same. But when you get into kind of those last 5 minutes of the halves, especially in the fourth quarter, Cade Cunningham has shown the type of player to be able to take over. And obviously, all of us would love if more of that is what we saw him grow into as you get some more talent around him, because it's exactly what we saw at Chauncey Billups. When he got kind of the right coach, and this is going to kind of lead into my next question, we saw Chauncey Billups become an even greater player than he had shown in a Pistons uniform. With the Detroit Pistons, the other news that kind of popped up was that they're assessing Monty Williams and if they're going to have him around for this Trajan Lane and rebuild. I want to be able to get your thoughts on that as well. Monty Williams as a coach, we've seen him come in and kind of start off with a very, very rocky road as it related to the handling of players like Jaden Ivey as well as Killian Hayes. We saw a little bit of that faith kind of pay off with, I guess, James Wiseman. He looked better towards the end of the season. But Monty Williams, what is your thought as it relates to the assessment the Pistons are doing and what you think is the best course of action?
It's a whole lot of money. That is my first reaction. Is that's a whole lot of money. Is that you're probably talking 50 to 60 to buy him out, somewhere in there. Let's call it 55, just for kicks and giggles. If it's 55 and you're Tom Gores and you just scratch out that check to buy him out, you're admitting the wrong in hiring him in the first place. But then who are you going to get? I mean, that's always my question. Whenever you're talking about firing somebody or trading somebody, who are you going to get? If you're just going to get somebody, then if you're going to get James Borrego, cool. I mean, I think that's a solid hire. But you've got to tell me what the plan is. But you've got to make it a coach that's going to meld with these players. And you're right. When all of that stuff comes together, that's when you can achieve greater things without having the talent that you need. But you've got to find the right coach that makes this all make sense. Monty Williams didn't have a good year. It's 1 year, and he didn't have a great roster either. So you can make an argument that he should stay, but I can also see the argument that he should go, that it just wasn't the right fit at the right time. And he told you as much. Like, I didn't want to be here. I want to be with my wife and spending time with my family and take this year off. Wait, how many million? Okay, well, that's a number I can't turn down. And your agent is telling you can't turn this down. Well, okay, that's kind of what it is.
Your coaching fraternity is telling you can't turn it down, because look at what's happened since he's gotten his deal. And now all of a sudden, not do you have 4 or 5 other coaches now kind of lapping him, moving ahead of him as it relates to how much money coaches are getting, but then you even get a guy like Dan Hurley in college, and we know how great he is in the college circuit, but he's being offered $70 million. And you know what I saw from different national outlets? That was a low ball offer.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's what, when you're talking about the agents, when you're talking about your unions, you're talking about people who are like, you know what? This will do great for the generations to come, as well as for what coaches are able to get right now. And you're right. Early on, he told us, and it wasn't just then. In training camp, he told us, this is not the type of team that I like to be able to coach. I need a few more vets. This is a lot more young guys than I'm comfortable with. So though he's been credited with being instrumental in the development of some young players, like we look at the Kelly Oubre's, he does get some credit for Mikal Bridges. He does get a little bit of credit for, like, Devin Booker, but he was already that guy. Yeah. But those teams were also surrounded, and they had some good veterans on their squad as well. So those things do make a difference. He came to this team, and it was literally a bunch of young players and hobble vets. Yeah. So it's interesting, man. But, Rod, any last words today?
No. I think it's just these next couple of weeks are going to be really interesting to see how things develop, and just how this franchise moves forward, whether they get the GM that they want. They know who's going to be running the show and pulling all the strings, but do they get the GM they want? Do they continue with the coach? This is going to really be the decision that's going to shape these next maybe 4 or 5 years of this franchise, is how they handle the rest of this summer. Yep.
It's going to be interesting to see. Hopefully we get the GM in place soon, and we're able to have that press conference as well as the pre-draft press conference, so we can get kind of a feel for the strategy. Obviously, they're not going to lay out their entire board for us, but we are able to learn a lot being in those press conferences about at least the type of guy he is, how he kind of values talent, and what exactly he's looking for with the Detroit Pistons. And it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out. Like I said, as a credentialed, reporter and writer of the Detroit Pistons for Woodward Sports, with this being now the second front office unit that I'm going to be able to have the opportunity to cover, I'm going in it this time a little bit different. Whether there's optimism or caution, this time it's more of a wait-and-see approach, realistically utilizing what we believe to be the best course of action forward, and seeing how whatever it does, whether it agrees with what I believe, what we say, or not, what type of success is he having? And I do believe it needs to happen sooner rather than later, more a 2 to 3 year window rather than a 4 to 5 year window. So,
yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair.
Yep. Well, all right then. Rod, as always, thank you so much for your time, man. We appreciate this every single week that we get the opportunity to be able to sit down and talk all 4 Detroit sports teams with you. A couple segments today. Detroit News Rod Beard, sports editor-in-chief of the Detroit News. Need you guys to definitely go ahead and tap in with the Detroit News, support them. They have great writers who are also great people out there on the media beat as well. But as always, Rod, thank you for your time, brother.
Thank you, Rod.
All right, appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you to JB as well and Broder for getting everything set up behind the scenes. Shout out to KG. Also, forgot to shout him out a little bit earlier on the show. That's our brother. He will be back with us on tomorrow. But we got to get into some more what, Lions talk?
Lions, Tigers, Bears, oh my. Tell them about Lady Jane's Kool-Aid.
I will tell you about Lady Jane's. It's really something awesome. And awesome is when a guy can be a guy and get an amazing haircut. That is Lady.